Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Well, hello once again, and welcome to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Good to have you along for the whole half hour, I hope. John Scholes here, joining me momentarily, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. As I always tell you right off the top of the show, contact information to reach out to Lior and the team anytime on your own time, right? Phone calls first, always, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. We'll give you some other contact information throughout the half hour to put you in touch with the team. We cover a lot of stuff on this radio show. We get rid of, we dispel the myths and misconceptions about employment law each week. We also take phone calls from our long-running radio show that's been across the country for over a decade. How about that? You can reach out locally here in the GTA Sundays, 1 p.m. on News Talk 1010. Always invited to call into the station at that time. Talk to Lior and I. Maybe your phone call will get on this particular show in the coming weeks or months. How about that? We got a main topic every show, coming back from a layoff. We'll get to the top questions about doing that, returning to work from a layoff. So stick ahead for that, possibly some emails and some other correspondence. So much to do over the next 30 minutes, but we get into it right now. Lior, welcome, and good to have you along this week again, pal. Always start off with the case of the day. What is cooking on your end?
Hey, John, awesome to be here to talk about this so important, vital topic. In fact, employment law, your workplace rights. You have a right to know what those rights are. And on this show, we tell you everything you need to know about what to do if your boss is giving you an ultimatum, if you lost your job, if your job has changed, maybe you're being discriminated against, maybe you have to go on a medical leave. What does it all mean? What to do? What to say? On this show, we solve those problems. We tell you, we demystify this topic. So if you're working, even if everything is going smoothly, even if there's no problems, you still need to know your rights, because it's possible that at some point something will happen that will raise this as an issue, and you should know what your rights are. And of course, you may be able to help your friend, your colleague, with their workplace issue, because sometimes things don't go smoothly in the workplace. I can say that. I know we operate across Canada, and the reason for that is because of the fact that employment law issues come up. So stay tuned for that. And of course, beyond the show, no problem. I still want to talk to you. You can reach me in the office by phone or email. That contact information you can get throughout the show. But let me tell you about a situation that came across my desk very, very recently. I spoke with a gentleman that for years has worked with this employer on a schedule that was Wednesday to Sunday. So he worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and he had Monday and Tuesday off. He liked that schedule because he had his kids with him during the week, not on the weekend. So it allowed him to spend more time with his kids. So that actually worked out really well for him. Happy, no problem with that for him. Well, recently, that employer decided that they're going to shut down on the weekend. They're no longer going to be open on the weekend. So it's only going to be Monday to Friday. But they said to him, don't worry about it. Good news for you. You're still going to have your job. We're just going to have you work Monday to Friday instead of Wednesday to Sunday. So no more weekends. So he said, well, I don't want to do that. That's not what I've always done. So let's not do it. Of course, there was no choice here because the company is not going to operate on the weekends. So he called me and he wanted to understand what his rights were. So let's be clear. Obviously, this is not a company that's picking on this guy. They're not doing it to him on purpose. They're not trying to hurt him. They're legitimately changing things in the business. So that's fine. But the real question is not that. The real question is, can they still have the ability to change his schedule from Wednesday to Sunday to Monday to Friday? And the answer is no. That is a significant change to the terms of employment. In most cases, your employer does not have a right to make those significant changes. And if they do, like in this situation, he has now the right to consider this to be a constructive dismissal. By changing his schedule from a Wednesday to Sunday to a Monday to Friday, he can consider his employment as being terminated and require the company to pay him severance. Now, remember, the company is not letting him go. In fact, they told him, you have your job. He can choose to consider that a termination. He can choose to get his full severance. He's been there about 6 years. He's going to be owed 8 to 9 months of severance. But I wanted to remind everyone, especially when it comes to your work days, changes to your work days is almost always going to be a big deal and can result in a constructive dismissal. If you go from certain days to working other days, or from days to nights, or maybe it's a situation where now you're being told you have to work rotating shifts, all those things are it's considered a big change, not something your employer is allowed to do. And if you're faced with that situation, one of the options you have is to consider that to be a constructive dismissal. Of course, to do that, happy to talk to you. Just give me a call.
Now, this particular client, Lior, obviously sounds like due to family status, this change is not going to work for this guy. But, you know, if the situation was where he thought, I get my weekends back, might not be too bad, maybe I can make it work. Can I give it a try for a bit? And if it doesn't work, then no, I'm not going to keep it permanent. Possibility, yeah?
Yeah, he may have wanted to say, well, let's see how this fits within my lifestyle. Maybe I'm going to like it, as you said. Maybe I'm going to like having weekends off and not having to work on those weekends. So what he could have done in that situation, what an employee generally can do, is to say to the employer in writing, employer, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I don't know if I'm okay with this, but I'm going to try it and then let you know. I'm going to try it for the next few weeks. And if it works out, I'll tell you, all good. If it's not working out, then we'll have a different conversation. So yes, as long as you tell your employer that you're not accepting this forever, you're just going to try it to see how it's working out and how you like it, you can do that, but only generally for a period of a few weeks. If you say, I'm going to try this for the next year, that may not be okay, and that could be considered an acceptance of the new changes.
As we mentioned off the top, radio shows across the country, locally here in the GTA, Lior and I, News Talk 1010, our sister station, Sundays at 1 p.m. Got a lot of phone calls. We play them here. We talk about them. Phone call number 1, Lior, for this show is coming at you right now. Listen up.
I'm in a position of management and had a salary plus a commission base. We sort of downsized and we got switched over to do commissions direct. I'm no longer getting the salary that I was accustomed to, and I've been forced into a straight commission-based pay. And I'm wondering if that is a breach of my contract that I have with them.
How long have you worked for this company?
Just over 2 years.
How old are you?
I'm 53.
Okay, what do you think?
So, John, I was just saying how changes to your days of work is a big deal. It's a big change. Well, here's another example of something that's almost always going to be a big change. Changing the way you get paid, or your compensation structure. In this case, he was getting paid salary plus commissions. Now it's going to be commissions straight. Now, it would have been not the same thing whether or not he was on a full commission, and now they want to take some of the commission and replace it with salary. Anytime your salary or compensation structure changes, that can absolutely result in a constructive dismissal. It's not something in most cases your employer is allowed to do. So what does he do here? Well, number one option, of course, is he can accept this change and continue working, and now he's 100% commission. The other option, of course, as I was saying, he can consider this potentially to be a constructive dismissal and say, no, I'm not accepting this, I'm leaving, and I'm considering that a termination. Now you have to pay me my severance. Of course, the last question then will become, if he does that, how much severance is he owed? How much severance should he be getting? To find out, I'm going to go back and use my favorite tool, which is the severance calculator. You can find that at EmploymentLawyer.ca. You can use it for free, of course, anytime. And here's what that tells us. We know he's 53 years old. He's a manager. He's been there for 2 years. If he considers this to be a constructive dismissal, he's going to be owed right around 6 months severance. You see that bottom line there, 6 months of severance. That's what's at stake for him, even though he's only worked there for 2 years. By the way, free and anonymous. Check out the severance calculator at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca.
All right, great call off the top there. First one of the show from our radio show. We'll get to more of those later in the half hour, but our main topic is just ahead, returning from a layoff. Top questions about that topic is on the way next. Stick around. Lots more Ask a Lawyer here on CP24 is coming right up.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
All right, Welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. This is CP24. John Scholes, Lior Samphir. We're back together with you this week to reach out to Lior. You make that phone call first, 1-855-821-5900 anytime. Ask@EmploymentLawyer.ca. That's the email address, or use that QR code on your screen as well. Lior, it's time for the main topic, coming back from a temporary layoff. I got a bunch of questions for you. First, just briefly, layoff. What's the deal with that quickly?
So we want to talk about returning back from a temporary layoff, but I want all our viewers to remember that in most cases, your employer does not actually have a right to put you on a temporary layoff. By putting you on that layoff, you may be able to consider that to be a termination. You don't have to accept that. You can do that on day one. But of course, if you want to continue working, if you want to accept that temporary layoff, there's things that you need to know about returning from work, and that's what we want to spend some time discussing.
All right, let's get into our questions. Number one, when you do come back, how much leeway, Lior, does your employer have as far as changing maybe your pay, your duties, work location, hours, stuff like that?
Not a lot of leeway at all. Your employer cannot make significant changes to the terms of employment, even if you're coming back from a temporary layoff. The idea is, yeah, you should be brought back to the same job, same pay, same hours, same work location, etc. And if your employer doesn't do that, if your employer makes significant changes to the terms of your employment, you may be able to say, no, not so fast. That's a constructive dismissal. You're going to owe me severance. That could be as much as 2 years' pay. So in most cases, yeah, you should be back to the same terms. If you're not, if your employer says, yeah, we'll bring you back, but different hours, different pay, call me, but call me right away.
What do you do if you're greeted with a new employment contract when you walk in the door? How about that?
Be very concerned. There is no reason in this world why your employer should be asking you to sign a new employment agreement just because you're coming back from a temporary layoff. No reason other than to provide the employer with better terms. It could potentially limit your future severance. It could give the company the right to limit where you work in the future. It can do many other bad things. So no, you should not just sign that new employment agreement. There's no reason for it. You can simply continue working the way you were. So you can tell your employer, no, I'm okay with the way things are. I'm not going to sign that new employment agreement. And always remember, you can't be disciplined because you refuse to sign a new employment agreement.
Lior, how about your time spent with the company, maybe even seniority? Does that carry through the entire time until you come back from that layoff?
Important question to remember, that your seniority continues while you're on a temporary layoff. That time that you're on a layoff counts towards your full seniority. So it's not a situation that we forget about that time or that your time starts at zero. That time on a layoff counts, and that's important because the more time you have with the company, the more length of employment you have, the more entitlements you're going to have if and when you lose your job. So very important to remember, your seniority simply continues for the months and months that you may actually be off on a temporary layoff.
Let me ask you one more question. So far, we've assumed this all happens when you come back from the layoff. What if you aren't called back at all? That phone never rings.
Well, certainly after a period of time, the law automatically considers your employment as being terminated. Depending on the situation, you could be off on a layoff for as much as 34 weeks. That's assuming you want to accept the layoff to begin with, which you don't have to. And after that period of time, the law says, doesn't matter what the company intends, that's now a termination. Employer, you must pay the employee their full severance. So if you've been sitting at home waiting to be called back to work, it's not happening, your employer is now ghosting you and it certainly hasn't paid you anything, call me. Let me do what I do. Let's make sure you get your full severance so that you can move on somewhere else.
All right, good stuff, Lior. We got time to get another phone call in from one of our radio shows. Let's have a listen to that now, shall we?
Let's say you're a contract worker and you're responsible for your own T4 and your own income tax and you're basically self-employed, but you depend on this one company for work and then all of a sudden they terminate you or they cut your contract and you don't make as much money with them. Are you entitled to any severance at all? I have to be there at a certain time and I have to meet time commitments all the time and I don't use my own tools.
Break it down.
So this lady, this caller hits all the right points. Because guess what? She's been misclassified as a contractor when she's really an employee. Because she has one job. The company tells her where to go and when to be at work, and they provide the tools to do the job. So she looks like an employee. She acts like an employee. So yeah, the result is she is an employee. Doesn't matter what piece of paper she may have signed. It also doesn't matter how she pays her taxes. This is a very common thing. Our viewers right now at home may be in a situation where they believe they're a contractor, but they they are really employees. Happens all the time. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because if you truly are an employee, you have the rights of an employee, like overtime pay, vacation pay, severance, of course. So especially important if you lose that job, if you've been misclassified and you really are an employee, you could be owed as much as 2 years severance. If that happens to you, you know what to do. Give me a call.
Couple great calls so far, Leo. We got time for a third on the other side of the break. We'll do that as we continue more Ask a Lawyer here on CP24.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Welcome back. Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Lots more to go. Phone call number 3. You want to reach out to Lior, by the way, anytime when the show's not on air. Otherwise, phone number simple, 1-855-821-5900. There it is. Email ask@employmentlawyer.ca. Use that or scan the QR code on the top right of your screen as well. Okay, phone call number 3. News Talk, 10:10, Sundays, 1 p.m. You got to join us on the radio. Call in and get your questions possibly on air. Let's get to phone call number 3, Lior, right now.
Recently been let go of my job after 7 years. After 7 years, I was diagnosed with emphysema. The company changed hands. They hired a consultant, and I reported, my being diagnosed with this to him. And they gave me a note with all these kind of questions on it. They wanted me to fill out like it was a disability form. Sorry, after I got it filled out by my doctor, and he says, yes, he has medical conditions, they fired me. They didn't offer me anything.
They got it all wrong. They got it all wrong.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember this call from our radio show, John. Illegal, completely illegal here. If even part of the reason why this person was let go was because of his medical condition, that's a human rights violation. You cannot be let go because you have a serious medical condition, as simple as that. And it'd be very difficult to convince me or anyone that that's not what happened here. Yes, it's a human rights violation. You should not be let go in that situation. Issue number 1. Second issue, beyond that, of course, is what severance is he owed, because you can't let someone go without severance in that situation. So let's focus on that just for a second. We're going to go back and use our severance calculator tool. You can find that always at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. And let's see what that gives us. In a technical role, this guy is 48 years of age, been there for 7 years. For some reason, the company thinks they don't have to pay him severance. Well, that's wrong. You can see right there in the bottom, they owe him easily 8 months of severance. That could easily be more than that. So 8 months of severance. In addition, as I said, potentially human rights damages because he was let go in a situation where he had a medical condition. So this company did it wrong, wrongful dismissal, human rights violation. If any of that, anything close to that happens to you, you have to call me.
You can join Lior, by the way, and members of his team. Their weekly live stream happens on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. How do you reach it? At stlawyers.ca. Here's the question for this week, Lior. I was just let go with 20 weeks pay after a few decades in a senior management role. The company is asking if I want to take it as a lump sum or salary continuance. What should I do?
Well, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, okay? So the lump sum or salary continuance is step 5. Step 1 is to figure out how much you're owed. Now, if this person has been there for a few decades, I don't know what that means. Is it 2 decades? Is it 5 decades? But certainly they're going to be owed closer to 2 years pay, maybe even over 2 years pay, 24 months. They've been offered 20 weeks. So right now we have a huge delta. So we don't even think about lump sum versus salary continuance until we can come to an agreement on the right amount. So we have a wrongful dismissal here, John. No, don't even worry about that. It's like going to the doctor and being told within 5 minutes, do you want the surgery Tuesday or Wednesday? Well, first of all, tell me what my medical condition is before we talk about the date of the surgery. Same thing with this. If you lose your job, do the right thing, do the smart thing, either use the severance calculator or even better yet, give me a call.
We have time for an email, a question for sure on the other side of the break, Lior. We will get to that momentarily right here on Ask a Lawyer on CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. A few minutes to go here. I always want to remind you can reach out after the show to Lior and his team anytime. We'll give you the phone number first as it pops up on your screen, 1-855-821-5900. Email is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. That is where we're going to go right now, Lior. Here's the email to wrap up the show. It says, for the past 3 years, I've received a substantial bonus around this time of year. Despite hitting all my goals, my manager just informed me that the bonus is ending and they will no longer honor overtime pay. These changes will significantly impact my income. You bet. What do you think?
So it's easy to think of a bonus as a discretionary thing that the company gets to decide, and it's in their discretion. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Well, no, not so fast at all. If you get it always, and it's something you can count on as part of your compensation, because it's not a question of if, it's simply a question of maybe how much, but you always get it. It becomes a term of employment, and your employer can't just take it away. It's part of your compensation. So the company can't just decide one day, hey, from now on, no more bonuses, even though you've counted on them for the last number of years. If they do that, number one, you can take legal action to recover the amount of bonus that they should have paid you. And number two, depending on the amount, that can also be a constructive dismissal. By the way, the same thing happens if you sign an employment agreement that says that the bonus is discretionary. It doesn't matter. If over the years it became a regular thing, then they have to pay it. Now, of course, if over the years sometimes they pay it, sometimes they don't, and it's up to them, then clearly it is discretionary. But if they've always treated it as part of your compensation, your employer cannot just take your bonus. If they do, again, a good place to start, giving me a call.
And that is just about running up against the clock for this week. Lior, thank you so much. You can always join us on the radio, and otherwise, here's how you reach out to Lior anytime. We'll give you that phone number one more time, 1-855-821-5900. Email we always go to, ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And Lior referred to it and used it, the severance calculator, to be found at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. News Talk, 10:10, Sundays at 1. Be there for the radio show and call in. And finally, for any other details, cp24.com/ask-a-lawyer. And we'll catch you next time right here on this show. Enjoy the rest of your evening.